What's up YouTube, HPJ here, and I am coming at you guys today with my Gravekeepers deck profile. So Gravekeepers, it's been a minute since we've seen these guys on the channel, and I wanted to give you guys another deck profile for them. This is pretty much a casual version of Gravekeepers, nothing too big or fancy, just a lot of here and there together cards, and really just working around Necro Valley, the field spell, and a lot of the combinations you can get off of Necro Valley. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, for my deck lineup, for my monsters, I am running 3 copies each of Gravekeeper's Headman, Gravekeeper's Recruiter, Gravekeeper's Spiritualist, Gravekeeper's Descendant, Gravekeeper's Commandant, and Gravekeeper's Spy. So that is a total of 18 monsters that I'm running in the main deck. And they're all Gravekeeper. So that is it for the monster lineup. Let's move on to the spells. I'm running 3 copies of Necro Valley, 3 copies of Necro Valley's Tomb, 3 copies of Gravekeeper Stelly, 1 copy of Hidden Tomb of Necro Valley, 1 copy of Royal Tribute, and 2 copies of Allure of Darkness. Alright, so that is it for the spells. Let's move on to the traps, and this is a fairly simple amount of traps. I'm running 3 copies of Necro Valley Temples, and 1 copy each of Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, and Solemn Judgment. So that is pretty much it for the main deck. 40 cards in total. Alright, now we're going to move on to the extra deck, and I'm rocking 3 copies of Gravekeeper Spiritualist, 2 copies of Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Warrior, 1 copy of We Witch's Apprentice, 1 copy of Underclock Taker, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, and 1 copy of Barrel Low Dragon. No, not Barrel Sword. If I had Barrel Sword, trust me, you'd know I've had Barrel Sword. Alright, so that's Barrel Low Dragon. And then for the rest of the monsters in the extra deck, I'm running 1 copy of Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, 1 copy of Tornado Dragon, 1 copy of Gaga Cowboy, 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 1 copy of Babuska, the Terribly Tired Tape Eater, and 1 copy of Master Key Beetle. So that is pretty much it for the main and extra deck. Let's talk about these choices. So I'm running 3 copies of each of the Gravekeeper monsters, primarily because this deck is just going to focus on them. And I didn't want to run any hand traps, because I figured with cards like Royal Tribute in my deck, I kind of don't want to latch on to them. I wanted to keep on just something very casual, very self-explanatory, and very self-setup. So, with that said and done, the one Gravekeeper's Headman, she allows you to special summon a Gravekeeper monster from your graveyard that's level 4, either in face-up attack position or face-down defense position. And what really helps you with that is that you can use Gravekeeper Spy, then you'll get you Descending, you can get Spiritualist, you can summon Commanding and have Commanding as a full-out attacker. And really, this just relies on when it's summoned. So if you flip summon it, normal summon it, special summon it, Headman will trigger and she will activate her effects. Funny little tip about Headman, her name in the OCG is Gravekeeper's Cleric. I don't know why they changed it, because there's 2 Psychic type monsters that have Cleric in its name, and I think there's also an Earth Spellcaster outside of the Gravekeepers that has Cleric in its name. So that was a very strange decision choice, but whatever. Next we move over, we have Gravekeeper Recruiter. This is pretty much the Witch of the Black Forest for the Gravekeeper monsters. If you have 15 or less defense, Gravekeeper's Recruiter will search for you as long as you have Gravekeeper in your name. Oh, another fun fact about Gravekeeper's Headman before I move on to Recruiter. Headman's effect cannot be negated by Necro Valley. Alright, now back on to Recruiter. Recruiter's effect isn't even affected by Necro Valley because it's not doing anything to the graveyard. It's just a primetime searcher. And you have a ton of cards that you can easily benefit from this. You can pop this with Descendant so that you can destroy a card through Descendant's effect, and then you can search off of Recruiter. Recruiter can search for Descendant. Recruiter can search for a ton of cards in this deck, including Headsman as well. So that is Recruiter. We're going to move on to the Polymerization in this deck, in the fusion setup for this deck, and that is Gravekeeper Spiritualist. So while Necro Valley's on the field, you can fusion summon one spellcaster type fusion monster from your extra deck, using her and monsters from your hand or field as material for that card. So pretty much you can easily go get Gravekeeper Supernaturalist. But here's another thing it's something that I think I brought up when the new cards came out and I did the deck profile for them then. Gravekeepers are all spellcaster, and you can use spellcaster type fusion monsters for this fusion summon. And one of them in particular is El Shadal Winda. Winda says she needs a dark monster and a Shadal monster for her fusion summon. Well, you have a dark monster in the form of Gravekeeper Spiritualist, and all you'll really need is a Shadal monster. Once you have Winda on the field, you pretty much shut down the massive special summons. It is a gimmick that I just wanted people to know, and it was actually brought to my attention back then, and I wanted to bring it up once more this time around. So now we move on. We have Gravekeeper's Descendant. So you pretty much pop another Gravekeeper monster to select a card on your opponent's side of the field and pop it. You get a lot of range out of Descendant because it has such low attack, such low defense. You have easy ways to search for it. Recruiter can search for it. You can search summon it off of Headsman. You can search summon it off of Spy. And you just have a lot of ways to get Descendant onto the board or into your hand. And then you have ways to clear the board thanks to Descendant's effect. Next up is the Field Spell Searcher, and that is Gravekeeper's Commanded. Discard this card from your hand to add one Necro Valley from your deck to your hand. Funny enough story, there was something brung up about Harpie Queen in a video that I watched on YouTube, and is ironically true. The Field Spell Searchers, for the most part, have their field spells in their background. Gravekeeper's Commanded is one of them. Another one is Warrior of Atlantis, who has the ability to discard itself to search for a legendary ocean. Then you have the effect of Destroy Source, who can destroy itself. No, he can send itself from the hand to the graveyard to search for Jurassic World. There's another monster that searches for Lost World. But Harpie Queen and the Golden Stroke Eagle don't have the backgrounds of their field spells in their background, ironically enough. Even Captain Gold has a Skyscraper in his background. So it's awfully strange. Alright, and then we'll move on to the last monster of the deck, the main deck, and that is Gravekeeper's Spy. When this card is flipped, you can summon one Gravekeeper monster from your deck with 15 or less attack. So it's a complete opposite to Gravekeeper's Recruiter in terms of Recruiter searching for a monster with 15 or less defense and adding it to your hand. Gravekeeper's Spy is the one that will summon a monster from the deck with 15 or less attack. And trust me, the range is big. And you got a lot of monsters you can easily get off of Gravekeeper's Spy. You can even get a copy of itself and put it in defense mode and go from there. So, yeah, there's a lot of range with this. So I just kept it the simple set of 6 and the range and abilities that they work within each other. Alright, so we're going to move on from my monsters and we're going to move on to my spells. This would not be a Gravekeeper deck if it did not run Necro Valley. This is one of the most powerful field spells in the game. Reason why? Necro Valley completely shuts down the graveyard, and most of the Gravekeeper monsters thankfully have the ability of their effects get over Necro Valley's effect. And Necro Valley's effect is pretty much nothing can be moved from the graveyard, cards cannot special summon themselves from the graveyard, and cards cannot be banished from the graveyard. So it is a lot of things that used to work over Necro Valley, and then when the most recent print of Necro Valley came to be, Konami said, okay, we're going to completely make sure that nothing comes out the graveyard. That means no Treeborn Frog can use its effect to summon itself, because that was actually something that got over Necro Valley. The effects of a lot of the Light Swarms and stuff. Yeah, there was like a crazy amount of things that ended up getting over Necro Valley. And then they were just like, nope, no more of that. We're going to stop that. So Treeborn can't trigger itself. A lot of things can't trigger themselves, and you can't banish from the graveyard. So that is Necro Valley. And then the biggest thing about this is the 500 attack and defense that it gives to every monster that has Gravekeeper in its name. And every Gravekeeper monster is going to benefit from this completely, whether it's offensively or defensively. Now we move on to Necro Valley's Throne. And this is a really amazing card. So it has 2 effects, but you only use a Necro Valley a Necro Valley tomb once per turn. So the first effect is you can search your deck for a Gravekeeper monster, add it to your hand. The other effect is immediately after this card resolves, you can get an additional normal summon of a Gravekeeper monster from your hand. So it's a double summon or a search card, and you pick and choose which one you want to activate. And it's not too bad either. You have a lot of ways to search for this card. Yes, that's right. We have ways to search for Necro Valley cards. And trust me, you will want to take as much advantage from that as you possibly can. And this is actually a great card for Gravekeepers because you can just search for your Gravekeeper pieces like Spy and Descendant and Commandant and all of them without having to hassle. And it helps you in addition to Recruiter's effect. So that's one benefit there. And then the last benefit, of course, is with Descendant. Because if you Huntsman, you go get Descendant, you can play this to bring out another monster. And you can pop the Headsman and the other monster for Descendant's effect. And then speaking of recovery, we have Gravekeeper Stelly. Its effect cannot be negated by Necro Valley. And its effect is that you can add 2 Gravekeeper monsters from your graveyard to your hand. So you got your Warrior Return Alive. You got your Reinforcement of the Army. And you got a field spell to help back them up. The next card is the card that shuts down all the special summons, and that is Hidden Temple of Necro Valley. So you need to control Necro Valley and a face-up monster for this card to be activated, and while it's on the field, neither player can such summon monsters except for Gravekeepers. So that helps with a lot of decks that are not, against a lot of decks that are not running Gravekeeper monsters, which are pretty much anyone who isn't running a Gravekeeper deck. I think the only big exception would probably, nothing that runs Necro Valley. Like, if even bad anti-meta, like if you're running a random deck like Malefic World, because I know there's variations of Malefic monsters in Malefic World, and they run Necro Valley and Commanded. That's like literally the only way they can get over Hidden Tombs. And if you play a monster that has enough defense and attack to withstand being destroyed by battle or card effect, you pretty much have a one-shot negation. I mean, one-shot no special summon outside of Gravekeepers with that combination. Next up is Royal Tribute. So this is pretty much one of the few cards on the ban list that has to deal with hand destruction. And ironically enough, we got bad card destruction, but not this. Well, what this does is it pretty much singles out the monsters. Send every monster in both players' hands to the graveyard. You need to control Necro Valley in order for this effect for this card to be activated and resolved. No, you just need Necro Valley on the field to activate this card, but that shouldn't be too hard. The only problem with this is you can't search for Royal Tribute because Royal Tribute isn't a Necro Valley card and it's not a Gravekeeper card, but you still need to have Necro Valley on the board for it to activate. It's a really good way to get rid of hand traps. It's a really good way to get rid of heavy monster filled decks, and with a deck like Gravekeepers, they really don't care about losing their monsters because they have triple Stelly and they have other ways of recovering their monsters. And then the last card I'm running in the main deck is Allure Darkness, a pure dark deck. Why not run one of the pure dark attributes' easiest draw cards? Draw 2 cards, banish a dark monster. If I wanted to, I could have ran Leviator Sea Dragon to get a lot of those banished monsters back and benefit from it. So, alright, that is all of these spells. I'm going to move on to the trap cards. And Necro Valley's Tomb. This is the newest and latest of the trap cards. Simple enough effect. While this card is on the field, while you control a Gravekeeper in a Necro Valley, your opponent's monster loses 500 attack and defense. If this card in your possession is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add you can set one Necro Valley card from your deck to the field immediately. Except for a copy of itself. Yeah, I know, that sucks. But, hey, it's a really easy payoff. You have a card that pretty much slows your opponent's offensive capabilities down. Your monsters are going to have a buff. Already have a buff from Necro Valley. And there's going to be at least a 1,000 difference between you and the monster because you have Necro Valley and a Gravekeeper monster. And your opponent's monster just lost 500 attack and defense. So you really shouldn't be too worried about that, and it's not a bad card at all. And the other benefit to this is, if Necro Valley is in your hand or in the graveyard, and this card is face up on the field, you can put Necro Valley into the field spell zone from your graveyard or your hand. So yeah, quick effects, they do stuff, and honestly, a really great way to not have to flush through a round of trying to figure out how you're going to get your Necro Valley back, because your continuous trap will do it for you. And then, of course, I'm running the Solemn Brigade. I don't own any of the Imperial Tombs of Necro Valley, which is the counter trap. And in similar situations to Necro Valley Temple, you have to control a Gravekeeper type monster in Necro Valley to activate Tomb. And Tomb is pretty much a Solemn Judgment. So I figured because I don't have the themed Solemn Judgment for the Gravekeepers, why not just run Solemns? I can fold in any variation of Solemns too. I can go for 1 warning, 2 strike, or I can go for a full set of strikes, or I can go for 4 strikes and just drop one of the Tombs. But I just wanted to keep it as evenly matched as possible. I mean, there's a ton of variation of trap cards you can easily run with this deck. I just chose to run the ones I was more comfortable with. Alright, let's go on to the extra deck, and the first thing to talk about is the boss monster for the Gravekeepers. That is Gravekeeper's Supernaturalist. So, you need 2 Gravekeeper monsters for his fusion summon. When this card is fusion summon, it gains 100 attack and defense times the combined level of the 2 monsters used for its fusion summon. So, if you're using Gravekeeper Spiritualist and let's say Gravekeeper's Recruiter, that's a total of 800 points. So, that's 800 additional attack and defense on a 2000 attack and defense monster already. Then, in addition to that, Necro Valley's 500 attack on top of Gravekeeper Spiritualist's effect. So, you have a pretty big 300 attack body monster. Not to mention, imagine if you started using some of the heavy leveled Gravekeeper monsters. Like, I don't know, Gravekeeper's Oracle, who's a level 8. Gravekeeper's Visionary, who's a level 8. Shaman and Chief are high level Gravekeepers as well. So, combine those levels with Gravekeeper Spiritualist level, or use cards like Polymerization Super Poly, and you pretty much have a way to make your Gravekeeper Supernaturalist a giant beat stick. In addition to that, while Necro Valley's on the field and it's on the board, cards in your field spell zone and cards in itself cannot be destroyed by card effects. So no Regeki, no Dark Hole, no Twin Twisters and stuff like that. This card cannot be destroyed by them, which is great. Then during your main phase, you can activate the effect to search during the end phase for either a Gravekeeper monster or a Necro Valley card and add it to your hand, which is great because that's your searcher for pretty much your entire deck. You get your Gravekeeper card, or you get your Gravekeeper monster, or you get your Necro Valley cards. Whichever one you want, it's going to help you and go and get them. And 3 of them is a must for this deck because it is your biggest monster. It's your boss monster. Why not run 3 copies of your boss monster? Alright, I'm going to move on to Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Warrior. This was a very questionable card to put into the extra deck, but it was something I was like, why not try it? So what Daybreaker means is just 2 spellcasters. Gravekeeper monsters, all spellcaster. When it's link summon, you can put a counter on it and it'll gain 500 attack, I believe, for each counter on it. No, 300 attack for each spell counter on it. That's perfectly fine. Then for every time a spellcaster monster touches them to a zone this card points to, it will gain an additional counter. So that means an additional 300 attack on top of what it already has. So that would be what, 600 on top of it makes it a 2200 attacker. Now, the other benefit to this card is that once a turn, you can remove a counter from it to destroy one card on the field. I'm sorry. When you remove 2 counters from it to target a card on the field and destroy it. So you practically just get a respect with this thing, and it's not too hard. It's a really decent enough monster. And I decided to run 2 of them just because I wanted to have some ebb and flow in it. Also, because I kind of don't have multiples of the next card, and that is We Witch's Apprentice. 500 additional attack and defense to all dark attributed monsters on the field. Minus 400 attack and defense to all light monsters. Contradicts the Daybreaker, right? Yeah. But her other effect is that when she's destroyed, you can add a dark type monster from your graveyard to your hand. The only downside to this is I have to be careful with Necro Valleys on the field because then she won't get her effects. But other than that, she does allow you to get more range to your extra deck and then put Spiritualist on the board. So that way Spiritualist is on the board, she's on the board, bam. You can go for a really beefed up Supernaturalist. Why did I say Spiritualist? No, you go for a beefed up Supernaturalist. Some other additions to this, of course, are the Underclock Taker for the additional link markers. Nightmare Phoenix to get rid of spells. I don't have a Nightmare Cerberus, which would have been a great addition to this as well, because then they co-link with each other, and then I wouldn't have to worry about them being destroyed. And then you have Barrel Load Dragon. If you have Barrel Sword, you can fit him in, but Barrel Load is just a really amazing monster. The Barrel monsters are all really amazing cards, so you can take advantage of any of them that you honestly use. But this one is the Snatch, is pretty much the brain control, and then you get rid of the monster that you took during the end phase. So you can take your opponent's Link monster and Link summon with it, go right ahead. And this thing is literally, it just needs 4 monsters, and that's too hard. And plus I'm running cards like Clock Taker and Nightmare Phoenix. Okay guys, sorry about that. So yeah, that's pretty much Barrel Load Dragon. Alright, we're gonna move on to the rest of the monsters. We have Exciton Knight to clear the board if needed. Also, because he destroys stuff, if you control Necro Valley and you control a Spiritualist, Spiritualist won't be destroyed and neither will Necro Valley. So it pretty much just helps you protect it, get rid of everything else. Nice. And then you have Tornado Dragon to help you clear spells and traps. Cowboy for the 800 points of burn damage. Abyss Dweller to deal with additional graveyard stuff, because this deck does shut down Salamangreat with ease because it's Gravekeepers in Necro Valley. But in case you need some additional support, Dweller is there for it. Babuska to stall out your opponent and to force themselves into defense so their effects can't be used. And then you have Master Key Beetle. So Master Key Beetle is an old card I used to use with this deck, and it still comes in handy here. So you detach material from this card, you target 1 card on the field, and that card cannot be destroyed by card effects because you have because it's attached to Master Key Beetle. The other effect of this is if Key Beetle was to be destroyed, you can send the card that's attached to it to the graveyard. And that's like really one of the biggest combos you can get with it. It's a pretty hefty monster as well. So it was something that Gravekeepers easily make because, well, everybody in the deck is dark. You can bind it with your Wheat Witch's Apprentice for it to gain even more attack and defense. And it can protect your Necro Valley, it can protect your Spiritualist, it can protect like, a lot of things. So that's why I'm running it in here. So that is pretty much it for the deck itself. I do hope you guys enjoy, because I had a ton of fun doing this deck profile. If you guys have any questions and stuff, you can always put them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, as it helps tremendously. Hit that notification bell when you want to be informed of when I upload or when I do my live streams. Thank you guys so much for watching. HPJ signing out. Take care.